The morning sun spilled through the towering glass windows of Ethereal Fashion Group, catching on polished floors and designer shoes. The office buzzed with the low hum of ambition, the kind that smelled like espresso, perfume and quiet competition. Ava Johnson adjusted her blazer, smoothed the sleeves of her cream blouse, and took one last deep breath before walking through the executive hallway. Heads turned as she passed, some smiling politely, others pretending not to notice her. She wasn't just another employee. She was the heart of the brand's success, the strategist behind 3 record-breaking campaigns, every graph, every billboard, every headline. Her fingerprints were on it, and yet something felt off that morning. The air was too still. The looks lingered a little too long. When she stepped into the boardroom, her new director, Victoria Hale, was already there. Sleek, blonde, sharp as glass. Victoria didn't stand. She didn't smile. She just gestured to the chair across from her. "Ava, sit." Ava hesitated. "Is everything all right?" Victoria folded her arms. "Let's get to the point. We're restructuring the department. Your position is being eliminated." Ava blinked. "Eliminated?" "Yes, no warmth, no hesitation. Just precision, I don't understand. My campaigns have exceeded every projection." Victoria leaned back, eyes scanning Ava from head to toe like she was assessing fabric instead of a human being. "You're talented, Ava. No one denies that. But let's be honest. Your approach isn't quite aligned with our brand's identity anymore." Ava frowned. "My approach?" Victoria smiled thinly. "The tone, the representation, the image. It's just not the direction we're moving in." The word image hung in the air like a knife. Ava understood. It wasn't about approach, it was about her skin, her curls, her confidence, her refusal to code switch or shrink herself. "So," Ava said quietly, "you're saying I don't fit the image because I'm black." Victoria's lips twitched into a mock laugh. "Oh, come on. Don't make this about race. You people are always—" She stopped herself, realizing the words had already slipped. Ava's breath caught. The room suddenly felt small, suffocating. Her pulse drummed in her ears, but her voice stayed calm. "You people." "Got it." Victoria crossed her legs, unfazed. "HR will finalize the paperwork. We expect you to clear your desk by noon." Ava sat there, stunned, her hands trembling under the table. The same hands that had built their reputation, lifted their brand, brought in millions, were now dismissed without a trace of gratitude. When she stood, the room felt heavier. Her colleagues watched as she walked past, eyes flicking away the second hers met theirs. At her desk, she gathered her few personal items, a framed photo of her mother, a notebook full of campaign ideas, a coffee mug that read, "Make it happen." The receptionist, a young black intern named Kayla, whispered as Ava passed, "I'm so sorry." "You don't deserve this." Ava smiled gently. "One day, you'll see why this isn't the end." As the elevator doors closed, her reflection stared back at her, tear-streaked, humiliated, furious. But behind that fury was something else. "Resolve," she whispered to herself, almost like a vow. "They'll remember my name." The elevator dinged softly as it reached the ground floor. Ava Johnson stepped out of Ethereal Fashion Group, not as their employee anymore, but as the storm they had just created. Rain poured that night, the kind that seemed to echo every heartbreak in the city. Ava sat alone in her small apartment, boxes of her office things stacked in the corner. The mug that once read, "Make it happen," now held lukewarm tea she hadn't touched. The television hummed faintly in the background, an interview with Victoria Hale flashing across the screen. "Diversifying the brand image," Victoria was saying with a plastic smile, bringing in a more refined direction. Ava muted it. She couldn't stand the sound. She sank into the couch, exhaustion pressing down on her chest. She had sent out 20 resumes that day, each time rewriting her cover letter, each time lowering her salary expectations just a little more. Each reply was the same. Silence. Her phone buzzed, a message from her mother. "You don't let them break you, baby." You were built for more than their approval. Ava exhaled, closing her eyes. Her mother always said that, built for more. But right now, more felt like a fantasy she couldn't afford. Weeks turned into months. Bills piled up. Her savings dwindled. She took freelance gigs, designing logos for small boutiques, managing social pages for struggling startups. Nothing glamorous, but it kept her moving, and slowly, something started to shift. She noticed that every small business she helped, every client who couldn't afford big agency prices, lit up at her results. Her ideas worked. Her campaigns mattered. One evening, after pulling an all-nighter rebranding a small vegan skincare company, she stared at her laptop screen. Their online sales had tripled overnight. A spark flickered in her chest. She whispered, "If I can do it for them, why not for me?" That night, she opened a blank document. At the top, she typed Nuevo, a creative agency for the unseen, the unheard, the unstoppable. The name came from the Spanish word for new beginnings, new voice, new power. She smiled for the first time in months. Building Nuevo wasn't glamorous. Her office was a corner of her apartment, a thrift store desk, a borrowed printer, and sticky notes plastered across the wall like constellations. She worked until 3 a.m. most nights, her playlist alternating between lo-fi beats and motivational speeches. She learned contracts, taxes, branding, everything they said she wasn't capable of. There were failures, many of them. One client ghosted her after promising a deal. Another stole her pitch deck and gave it to a bigger firm. Each betrayal hit hard. But each time she reminded herself, you don't need their permission to win. Then came her break. A mid-sized athletic brand, Vitapulse, reached out. Their CEO, a black woman named Monica Drew, had heard about Ava's unique campaigns. They met at a downtown cafe. Monica smiled warmly, extending her hand. "I saw what you did with Glowleaf. That rebrand was genius. You think you can do the same for me?" Ava smiled, confident but grounded. "I can do better." Weeks later, Vitapulse exploded online. Their campaign, Run Your Own Race, went viral, a celebration of individuality and authenticity, featuring models of all colors, shapes, and backgrounds. Ava watched the numbers climb, tears in her eyes. She'd done it. Her way. Suddenly, her inbox flooded. Collaborations, investors, interviews. People wanted to know who she was, what she believed, and how she made diversity look like strength, not a checkbox. Nuevo became more than a brand. It became a movement. 2 years later, marble floors replaced the cracked tiles of her apartment. Ava walked through her new downtown office, glass walls gleaming, her team of 22 creatives buzzing with energy. "Morning, boss." Kayla, yes, the same intern from Ethereal, waved from her desk. Ava smiled. "Morning, superstar." She paused at her office door. On the glass was her name, Ava Johnson, founder and CEO. Nuevo Agency. For a moment, she just stood there, touching the words lightly. Everything she'd been told she couldn't do, she'd done. Everything they said she didn't deserve, she'd earned. And still, something deep in her gut whispered, it wasn't over. There was unfinished business. Ava sat at her desk, opening her laptop. An email blinked at the top of her inbox. Subject line, Opportunity, Acquisition of Ethereal Fashion Group. Her heart stopped. She clicked it open. The once untouchable empire that fired her for not fitting their image was collapsing. Their stocks had plummeted. Their board was desperate for a buyer. Ava leaned back in her chair, a slow, knowing smile spreading across her face. Looks like fate kept my seat warm. Ava reread the subject line again. Acquisition Proposal, Ethereal Fashion Group. 2 years ago, those words would have made her stomach twist. Tonight, they made her smile. She scrolled through the attached files, balance sheets bleeding red, client lists shrunk to half their size, staff morale reports that read like autopsies. Victoria Hale's empire was crumbling from the inside. 3 days later, Ava walked into a high-rise conference room overlooking the city, the same skyline that once watched her leave in tears. Now it glittered like applause. Across the table sat David Niles, a gray-templed investment broker who represented Ethereal's shareholders. He stood, extending his hand. Ms. Johnson, or should I say CEO Johnson. Your reputation precedes you, Ava returned a measured smile. Let's keep it simple. Ava is fine, David chuckled. Ethereal is looking for a strategic partner. The board is open to creative terms. Translation, Ava said lightly, sliding the folder back toward him. They're desperate. He tried to hide a grin. You did your homework. Over the next 2 weeks, Ava and her legal team played the long game. She never spoke to Victoria directly, only through intermediaries. Every document, every offer, every counteroffer was signed with clinical precision. When the numbers finally aligned, the board voted unanimously. Nuevo Agency would acquire 60% of Ethereal Fashion Group. The news hit the business headlines like lightning, rising creative powerhouse, buys iconic fashion brand, from underdog to industry disruptor Ava. Johnson's unstoppable rise. Ava closed the article. Without a smile. She didn't need validation from journalists. She wanted to see one. Face.Ethereal's headquarters hadn't changed. The same glass walls, the same sterile perfection. But as Ava stepped through the lobby, something inside her shifted. This time, the guards greeted her by name. This time she belonged. The guards greeted her by name. This time she belonged. An assistant escorted her to the top floor where Victoria Hale waited. The woman looked smaller now, same flawless suit, but edges dulled. When she saw Ava, her expression froze. Ava Johnson. I wasn't expecting— You should have, Ava said gently. I own this building now. Victoria's mouth opened, then closed again. Ava walked to the window, hands clasped behind her back. I read the reports. Sales dropped 47%. You lost 3 major clients. But I don't need to tell you that, do I? Victoria swallowed. You came to gloat? Ava turned, eyes calm, voice steady. No, I came to work. You have experience. I have vision. Together we can rebuild. If you can remember how to respect the people who build success for you. For a flicker of a second, hope crossed Victoria's face. Then Ava added, but not here. Your position's been reassigned, Victoria stiffened. To who? To Kayla Brooks, Ava said. The intern you used to send for coffee. Silence. Then a whisper. You can't be serious. Ava met her eyes. Completely. By noon? Staff gathered in the atrium as Ava addressed them for the first time. She stood at the same podium where Victoria once delivered cold speeches about brand identity. Her voice was clear, grounded, unshakable. When I worked here, I was told I didn't fit the image. Today, I'm here to say, we are the image. Creativity doesn't have a color, and respect isn't optional. Applause thundered through the room. Even those who'd once avoided her gaze clapped until their palms stung. Up on the mezzanine, Victoria watched, pale and silent, as Kayla Brooks, now dressed in a tailored suit, took her new place beside Ava. Later that evening, when the offices had emptied, Ava stood alone in the quiet. She walked to the same desk where she once packed her things. She rested her palm on its surface, feeling the ghosts of that day. Full circle? She whispered. Then she turned off the bar, lights, and stepped into her future. The office was nearly empty when Ava heard a knock. She looked up from her laptop. Victoria. Hale stood in the doorway, holding an envelope. Ava gestured to the chair across from her. Come in. Victoria hesitated before sitting. The woman who used to fill every room with her sharp voice now seemed smaller, almost fragile. She placed the envelope on the desk. My resignation. Ava didn't reach for it. You could have just sent that through HR. I wanted to hand it to you myself, Victoria said quietly. It seemed appropriate. Ava leaned back. Appropriate. That's not a word I expected from you. Victoria gave a faint, brittle laugh. I suppose you earned that. Silence settled between them, heavy but not hostile. Through the glass wall, the city glittered, endless lights, endless people, none of them caring about this quiet war ending on the 32nd floor. Finally, Victoria spoke again. When I fired you, I told myself it was about image. I told myself I was protecting the brand. Truth is, I was protecting my ego. You were good, too good, and I couldn't stand it. Ava said nothing. She just watched her, measured, calm, eyes unreadable. I've watched what you built, Victoria continued. You didn't just survive. You became everything I pretended to be. She swallowed hard. I don't expect forgiveness. Ava let the words linger, then asked, Then why come here? Victoria looked down at her hands. Because you deserve to hear it from me. You were right about everything. Ava rose from her chair and walked to the window. The same view she'd once stared at through tears now shimmered under her control. Her reflection stared back at her. Older, stronger, unbroken, she turned. I spent a long time imagining this day, she said. What I'd say, what I'd do. I thought revenge would feel satisfying. But it doesn't, not really. Victoria looked up, confused. Then why keep me here at all? Ava walked back to her desk, tapped the envelope once. Because I wanted you to see what it looks like when a black woman wins without becoming what tried to break her. Victoria blinked. Speechless. I could humiliate you, Ava said softly. I could make you pack boxes, walk you past every person you once ignored. But that would make me small, and I'm not small anymore. She slid the envelope back toward her. Leave with your dignity. That's the only kindness I owe you. Victoria stared at the paper, tears threatening. She stood slowly, voice trembling. You know, I used to think power meant control. But watching you, maybe it's grace. Ava didn't answer. She just nodded once. Victoria turned to leave. Just before the door closed, Ava said quietly, For what it's worth. I hope you learn to see people, not positions. Victoria paused, then left without a word. When the room was empty again, Ava exhaled, the adrenaline drained from her chest, replaced by something softer, peace maybe. She looked around the office, hers now, all of it, and thought about the path that brought her here. The humiliation, the late nights, the fear, the faith. It wasn't revenge that made her strong. It was surviving without losing herself. Her phone buzzed, a message from Kayla. Press wants a quote about the takeover. Should I say anything? Ava typed back, Tell them this. We're not rewriting history. We're just making room for everyone in it. She smiled, shut off the light, and stepped into the corridor. The next morning, the city woke to headlines that buzzed through every office, every coffee shop, every corporate boardroom. Black CEO Ava Johnson reshapes fashion giant in historic move. The woman they fired now owns the empire. Inside Ethereal Fashion's gleaming headquarters, cameras lined the marble lobby. A press conference was about to begin. Ava stood behind the stage curtain, dressed in a sharp white suit. Her calm presence filled the air before she even spoke. Kayla adjusted the mic, her new assistant clipboard in hand, trying to hide her excitement. You ready? She whispered. Ava smiled faintly. I've been ready since the day they told me I didn't belong. She stepped up to the podium, flashes bursting across the room like fireworks. The same company that once erased her name now had her initials etched on every elevator door. 2 years ago, Ava began, voice firm but warm. I walked out of this building in tears. I thought my dream was over. But sometimes life doesn't end a chapter, it hands you the pen. A hush fell over the crowd. Even the clicking cameras stopped. When I started my own company, I didn't do it to prove anyone wrong. I did it to prove to myself that what I had, my skin, my voice, my vision, was never the problem. She glanced toward the back, where a few former executives stood awkwardly, realizing they were part of a history lesson in progress. Ethereal's new mission, she continued, is simple. We build with everyone at the table. No more gatekeeping, no more invisible lines. If you have talent, passion, and respect, you have a place here. Applause erupted, genuine and thunderous. For the first time, Ethereal felt human. The following weeks were a storm of transformation. Ava's first executive order, equal opportunity hiring and leadership diversity. The second, an anonymous complaint system for workplace discrimination, reviewed by Ava herself. She didn't fire everyone who once mocked her. Some quit out of guilt, Others stayed, humbled, but those who stayed learned. Kayla thrived as creative director. Her fresh ideas revitalized the brand. The company's campaigns now featured faces, colors, and stories once ignored. And the profits? They tripled. Investors who once questioned Ava now competed to work with her. She didn't brag. She just smiled and said, "It's amazing what happens when people feel seen." One quiet afternoon, her secretary buzzed her office. "Ms. Johnson, there's someone asking to see you." "Says it's personal," Ava hesitated. "Who?" A pause. "Victoria Hale," Ava exhaled. "Send her in." Victoria entered, looking different, softer, humbled. No expensive jewelry, no high heels, just a woman stripped of pride. "I didn't come to ask for my job back," Victoria said. "I came to thank you." Ava raised a brow. "For what?" "For not humiliating me when you could have. For doing what I never did, leading with grace." Ava leaned back, studying her. "Growth suits you." Victoria smiled faintly. It took losing everything to learn what mattered. They shared a silence that wasn't bitter, just heavy with truth. "Before leaving," Victoria said quietly, "I tell people now that you were the best mistake I ever made." Ava almost laughed. "You were the lesson I needed to become who I am." Victoria nodded once and left. That night, Ava drove to her old neighborhood. She parked outside her mother's small brick house. Where the porch light still flickered, her mother opened the door, smiling wide. "Baby, you look like a CEO." Ava grinned. "Maybe because I am one." They laughed, hugged, and sat under the same stars that once heard Ava's fears. Her mom asked, "Does it feel good?" "Getting back at them?" Ava shook her head slowly. "It's not about getting back. It's about getting beyond." Her mother nodded, eyes glistening. "That's my girl." Days later, Ava stood in front of the ethereal building again, this time with a new sign, Ethereal Ex Nuevo, a Johnson legacy. She touched the glass, whispering to herself, "They said I was too black. Turns out, I was too brilliant for their limits." Then she turned to the waiting car, Kayla holding the door open. The city lights reflected in her eyes, calm, confident, unstoppable. As she got in, she said softly, "Let's get to work. There's a new world to build." The door shut, the car rolled away, and the camera panned up to the skyline, bright, alive, and forever changed by one woman's refusal to stay small. By one woman's refusal to stay small.